72 hours ago, America arrived at a turning point, and we are going to have a lot of discussion as to why that is and how we got here. But much of it has to do with how the Trump administration has responded to the tragic, deadly shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE officer. But before we get there, let's examine the incident itself and how it unfolded. I want to take a look at the increasing number of videos and angles from the moments surrounding the shooting. And I'm joined now by Darren Porcher. He's a former NYPD lieutenant. He's going to help us work through these videos. Darren, thank you for being with us to help us with this. I want to start with the video with which most of us are familiar. It was taken by a bystander and gives us probably the clearest look at what happened. In this video, Renee Good is at the wheel of this maroon Honda Pilot. Take note of this ICE officer who is walking around the back of the vehicle holding his cell phone in his right hand. This is Officer Jonathan Ross. We now know that he's recording video on a cell phone, again, in his right hand. The person with whom he's interacting appears to be Renee Good's wife. A pickup truck then pulls up. Two more officers get out and walk toward Renee Good's vehicle. In fact, one of the officers tries to open the door as Renee Good slowly reverses the vehicle, and he reaches inside the SUV. Now, that's him with his hand on the car door. But look beyond this. You see the original officer, Jonathan Ross. He's the one we first saw behind Renee Good's vehicle. He's now crossed in front of the Honda Pilot, and this is where things really escalate. The next video is going to play out very fast. Renee Good's vehicle starts to drive forward, appearing to turn toward the right, not toward Officer Ross. Officer Ross, near the front of the vehicle, pulls out his gun and shoots 3 times, including as the vehicle appears to pass in front of him. The SUV keeps rolling until it crashes into a parked car. Officer Ross, who fired the shots, is walking around freely. All right, this is the part. That's the first video that most people saw. There have since been several videos, Darren, that show largely the same thing. Sometimes you're waiting for the video that shows you something entirely different than what you thought you saw the first time. We didn't get that.
Correct. As we unpack this, we have a multitude of different flaws as it relates to training. From the first perspective, when the officer, the ICE agent, tried to open the vehicle door, that is something that we go against as it relates to best practices in policing. The best case scenario is to order the driver out of the vehicle because it makes it safer for you as a police officer because you don't know what's in that vehicle. So in addition to that, now we had an ICE agent that put himself in harm's way by standing directly in front of the pathway of the vehicle. Police departments prohibit officers from discharging their weapon at a moving vehicle unless that moving vehicle is introducing deadly physical force in addition, other than just the vehicle. The reason being is this: if you're successful in shooting the operator of that motor vehicle, the centrifugal force of that vehicle is going to continue to move forward. In addition to that, after the officer or the ICE agent fires the first shot, he then moves to the side and fires 2 additional shots. When he fires the 2 additional shots, the threat has passed. So you don't have a sense of urgency or immediacy. So it begs the question as to why did he fire those additional shots? This is something that he's going to have to answer to. Yep. And we have the Supreme Court law titled Graham versus Connor that was introduced in 1989, which supports when and how police officers can use force. This seems to be somewhat of a travesty, and there's a lot of answers that ICE is going to have to introduce to court as it relates to this officer's actions.
So one of the things that happens in a lot of these ICE immigration stops is they use a video to identify who the person is, who they're moving up to, and to get the license plate off the back of the car. I want to take a look at something something else that we know about this. This is a new video that the Trump administration is trying to draw your attention to. Yesterday, it came out. It's a video that was taken on the phone held by the ICE officer, Jonathan Ross, who fired the shots. And it was first obtained yesterday afternoon by a conservative website. Hours later, MS Now got its own copy from the Department of Homeland Security, which oddly is about 10 seconds longer than the original leaked version. 10 seconds shorter. The DHS released a version of this that was shorter than the one that was originally leaked. It starts about 10 seconds later. That's interesting. The Trump administration, specifically Vice President J.D. Vance, is using the new video to say that Renee Good was in the wrong. But I'll let you decide for yourself. I want to play the longer version for you now. I will caution you. It's already been pretty disturbing what you've seen. This one's more disturbing, and it contains profanities, and it ends with the sound of 3 gunshots.
Okay, we don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking country. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
Whoa!
Fucking bitch.
Okay, it's not clear who uttered those profanities at the end, but a few things I want to point out from this video. Officer Jonathan Ross, as we mentioned earlier, is filming from a cell phone while this is all happening. We see Ross cross in front of the vehicle while recording. Renee Good addresses Ross's cell phone camera directly from the front seat, smiling. She says, quote, "I'm not mad at you." Ross then circles to the back of the car where he does record Good's license plate. He encounters a woman who's believed to be Renee Good's wife, and after that exchange, the woman attempts to get into the passenger side of the car. Then you hear another officer, as Renee Good's wife is trying to get in, you hear another officer ordering Renee Good to get out of the car. And at this point, Officer Ross is near the front of the vehicle. He's now crossed entirely around the vehicle, still recording on his cell phone. Renee Good appears to turn the wheel all the way to the right, away from Officer Ross and where he's recording from his iPhone. She then starts to pull forward. The phone camera jerks around as 3 shots are fired. There were exactly 7 seconds between when Renee Good is ordered to get out of the car and when the shots are fired. So this addresses a few things you're talking about, that in many cases the goal is to get that license plate. He got it. He was around the back of the car, which is better policing practice. Absolutely. Going to that back of the car. He already had that. Then he circled the car entirely. She then, Renee Good's wife, gets into the car. She turns, and you see her turning the wheel in the opposite direction to where the ICE officer is.
You know what's interesting about this? We have an officer that's using a cell phone to capture video of the encounter. A lot of police departments use body cams. So for the life of me, I could not understand why ICE was not equipped with body cams, because it provides that lens into what's happening, and it actually works for the ICE agent to prove or disprove a theory if this is introduced in court. But in addition to that, when we look at the temperament of the lady, the deceased, she doesn't appear as an inflammatory perspective in terms of, look, she's looking to hurt the ICE agents. I don't hear threatening behavior. So it was clear to me, in addition to that, we don't have a crime that was committed. So it boggles my mind as to how this incident escalated to the level that it did. Merely let the person go away. You've
got the license plate number. You've got them on video. You can find them if you need to.
Right. And what I hear from the administration is that this was a professional agitator. Her job was to agitate the ICE agents. But that's not what I see in the video. But let's say hypothetically, if that's who she was. Police are the avid professionals. You are trained to deal with agitators accordingly, not take their life in a situation such as what we saw in this video. So it really baffles my mind as to how this escalated from 0 to 100 when simply this officer could have just stepped to the left, let that vehicle move off. Because as you mentioned, Ali, we saw the wheels turn, going in the direction opposite
to be clear, we
that
saw
officer.
that on the officer's phone. In other words, he was recording that. That's
Absolutely.
not other people's video. We wouldn't even have that video if not for the fact that the officer was actually recording the interaction. So he sees her turning her wheel in a direction opposite to where he's standing. So he's now cleared the front of the car. She turns her wheel that way, and we see the video of her driving off that way.
The officer had the perfect opportunity to just step away. Back in the 1970s, police departments on a national level conducted a study as it relates to either shooting at a vehicle or moving to the side. there's an overwhelming success that was captured by that study that determined that the best case scenario is, or the best practice is to step away from the vehicle as opposed to stand in front of it. This was a tragedy that could have been avoided. However, this is where we are right now, and this officer has an answer to this. And a problem that I have with the administration is they've drawn conclusions far too soon, whereas these shooting investigations take a long time. They dismantled this crime scene relatively quick. And from being a former lieutenant in the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau, I've investigated many of these police-involved shootings. It's an arduous task. You want to see what the trajectory of those bullets would have been going through that window. It takes a long time. In addition to that, mapping. What was the distance between the officer and the vehicle? That did not occur because the crime scene was dismantled so quick. And it also begs the question of how do we have complete transparency when we have the feds not working in tandem with state authorities in conducting these investigations? State police, when I say state police, meaning local and state officers, are involved in far more police shooting investigations than the feds. Therefore, it works best to have the two entities working symbiotically to ensure that we have the results that are proper and we can move forward and ultimately uphold that trust between the police and community. This fractures that police and community relationship because we have the monolithic perspective of the feds and not the conjoined
investigating one of their own.
Exactly.
And to be clear, the federal government has said that the state will not have a role in this investigation. So that's
which I've never seen.
Yeah.
I've never seen this before.
Yeah, it's very unusual. Darren, thank you for being here. I hate the fact that every time you and I are talking about this, we're talking about somebody who's been killed. But thank you for helping us analyze the video. Darren Porcher is a former lieutenant with the NYPD. He's an adjunct professor of criminal justice and security at Pace University.
It has been more than 3 weeks since the Justice Department missed the deadline to release all of the files related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, as required by law. Not a suggestion, by law. This week, the two House members who led the push to unseal those documents, Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna, asked a federal judge to step in and appoint a special master to ensure all the documents are released. The request comes after the DOJ revealed earlier in the week that it had only publicly posted about 12,000 documents, but still have more than 2 million to review, meaning they have released less than 1% of the files so far. I don't know if you're good at math. That's basically nothing. And all the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are demanding the Republican Oversight Chairman James Comer hold a hearing and force Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify about the DOJ's actions or inactions in releasing the Epstein files. Quote, the department's actions and public statements relating to the Epstein files have been conspicuously inconsistent, evasive, deficient, and misleading, heightening suspicions that DOJ is covering up details of Epstein's crimes in fealty to the White House. Joining us now is the top Democrat on that committee, House Oversight Committee, Congressman Robert Garcia. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on set this morning. You know, there's the question of the special master, but there's also the question, I've talked to some legal experts on this, that you guys, the Congress could just sue the administration, right? You could take the DOJ to court and say to a judge, they are breaking the law. Make them follow the law. And instead of a special master, which, you know, seems unlikely, but have like an actual lawsuit. Why would Republicans be on board with that? And why hasn't that happened yet?
So it hasn't happened yet because we'd actually have to have a majority of the House on board for the lawsuit. And so a lawsuit from the House actually has to be first really pushed by the majority or a majority of members. And so we would need support from Republicans to actually get that lawsuit.
Well, all of them but one signed.
Right. Still, that was an action they were forced to do. And so the legal action from the House is absolutely on the table, but so is legal action from outside groups. So there are a bunch of groups right now that are looking at the best way of approaching this. Getting a federal judge involved, which Congressman Connor from, of course, our committee is doing, is a good step and approach. And we've been planning kind of what this rollout on the legal front has been for a while. Right now, the fact that 99% of the Epstein files have not been released to the public from the DOJ is crazy. Yeah. Especially when you think about what's already been, of course, released. I mean, there's been some significant information that's come out to the public. And so this is incredible. I mean, the American public should be just pissed that the DOJ is defying the will of not just Congress, but of the public. The public wants the files released.
Yeah.
And you did have, though, a small victory this week, and along with the Oversight Committee, in succeeding to issue more subpoenas. That obviously requires the cooperation of James Comer, who has to sign off on those subpoenas. They're going to go to the longtime friend and client of Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner. He's the former CEO of Victoria's Secret, and Epstein managed his personal finances. There is some really excellent reporting about how inextricably entwined their fortunes were. I'm wondering what you hope to get from that, and also if you can make a little news here, who else you're planning on subpoenaing. I mean, there's a host of other names. Alan Dershowitz. There's Jean-Luc Brunel. There's a number of former personal assistants.
There's Donald Trump.
I imagine
Bill
that
Clinton.
lower profile names might be amenable to Comer signing on to subpoenas for them as well.
Absolutely. Look, we have a long list of subpoenas, a long list of folks that we want to actually, of course, talk to.
Who are the next people on those lists?
Yeah, well, let me first get to Les Wexner. This is really important. So Les Wexner is critical. I mean, this is a billionaire benefactor. A few people were involved with the finances more than him. And he, of course, led Victoria's Secret, was very involved, essentially paid for much of Epstein's fortune. And we also did a subpoena in that same exact meeting with both Epstein's former lawyer and accountant, the two heads of the Epstein estate. So those three individuals, the reason we subpoenaed them is because the survivors have mentioned their names to us more than any other names. In fact, after the Wexner subpoena vote, I got multiple messages from survivors saying thank you. And remember, Wexner was listed as someone that actually, by Virginia Giuffre, where abuse was happening at his home, and another of the survivors actually mentioned that he actually also did the abuse. And so, look, we want to find out what happened there. As far as people in the future,
did prosecutors ever identify him as a co-conspirator?
So that is one of the problems, is we don't know because we don't have the access to the files. And we don't know who made the decision to not go after either whether it's Mr. Wexner or other folks. As far as folks in the future, I want Jeffrey Epstein's pilot in front of the committee. I want Jeffrey Epstein's assistants in front of the committee. And so there's a lot of folks that we are pushing. We have been pushing Comer, particularly on Wexner and both Daniel and Richard, who are the two heads of the Epstein estate. We've been pushing to get those names. We finally got them, quite frankly, because Representative Luna on the other side worked with me. We cut a deal. We moved it forward, and we got some Republicans to vote with us.
On this issue of holding DOJ accountable for not following the law, here's Thomas Massie, Congressman Massie, on Tuesday, where he claims that Trump officials could face criminal prosecution over the Epstein files. Watch this.
Typically, like with contempt, you might refer that to the DOJ, and then the DOJ never prosecutes itself. And then the problem goes away at the end of the Congress because it's contempt because they're not in compliance with the congressional subpoena, which expires at the end of Congress. This law does not expire at the end of Congress, and so they've got a real problem. The contempt that the Congress refers, they could be in jeopardy of that even after this Congress.
Okay, Congressman Garcia, I wanted to play that because in a rational world, in a real world where you have officials playing by the rules, they should be afraid. But we're talking about the Trump administration, where they have shown basically from the moment he took the oath of office that he and they do not give a damn about what the law says, what norms are. And this is the same man who went on the record with the New York Times to say, in terms of foreign policy, morality is his own morality, and his own mind is what's going to guide him. So why should Congressman Massie? Why should you think that a contempt charge on any official within the Trump administration would even be taken seriously, let alone investigated or acted upon?
I mean, I think there's two things that are important. I mean, one is because Donald Trump's not going to be the president forever, and Republicans aren't going to control the House forever, and we're going to ensure that anyone that is causing harm to the American public, lying, cheating, breaking the Constitution, redacting information illegally, all of that has got to be, we've got to hold folks accountable for that. The second piece is because there are actually good civil servants at the DOJ and at the FBI that have worked on these files, that know what's in them. There are whistleblowers within the Department of Justice. There is a bubble that continues to grow of people within our agencies that are frustrated and tired of all of this being hidden and not coming out. And so there's going to be a lot of people, I believe, if the files aren't released and everything's not put on the table, you are going to have, I believe, people within the DOJ begin to call that out. And I think that Pam Bondi knows this, which is why they are working overtime and trying to cover their tracks right now. We are talking to folks right now. I have heard some of the items that are possibly in the DOJ's possession. They got to release all the files.
Congressman, I'm going to get in trouble with our producers because we are out of time, but I want to get you on another topic. Let's go to E6, guys. The House voted to subpoena a journalist over a report on Delta Force Commander. This was led by the House committee member Anna Paulina Luna, who accused a journalist, Seth Harp, of leaking classified intel after he posted a photograph of a person he identified as the commander of the elite unit responsible for the Venezuela operation. In that reporting that came out Thursday, it said that you supported that. I'm curious, and I guess help explain to me and explain to the American people why it shouldn't be concerning that Congress or any administration would subpoena a reporter for reporting on what seems like something the American people and the world should hear.
Look, I think that's a good question. Look, essentially, Republicans control the majority on the Oversight Committee. So they were going to this subpoena, which Representative Luna brought forward, was going to happen with our votes or without our votes. They had the votes. They presented the subpoena. They were going to vote for it. Democrats made the decision, if they're going to subpoena this reporter, which was not our choice, that we're going to attach these Epstein subpoenas to that vote, and that's how we got the Epstein subpoenas. So we wouldn't have gotten the Epstein subpoenas without attaching them to her initial vote. We were going to lose that vote regardless.
But do you worry about the precedent that it might set
Absolutely.
to the American people?
I mean, look, it's not a subpoena that we agree with. Either that subpoena was going to go through with no Epstein subpoenas, or we were going to attach the Epstein subpoenas to them.
And we are beginning the hour with MS Now reporter Alex Cabot in Minneapolis, where hundreds are protesting against ICE, that which happened in their backyard. Alex, what are you hearing from Minneapolis residents today?
That's right, Alex. It's absolutely frigid here, about 20 degrees 5 with a wind chill, but that's not stopping hundreds, if not thousands of people making it out here to both commemorate the life of 37-year-old Renee Good, but also protest ICE. ICE, which is in the middle of a historic immigration crackdown here in Minneapolis, which the Trump administration has only double and triple down on since this tragedy on Wednesday. And now, as you can see, this protest is beginning with an indigenous ritual to pay homage to the immigrant history of this country. Incense are filling the air. People are holding flags from countries from around the world. Now, Alex, I want to introduce you to one of the protesters here. Her name is Brianna. She's a high school teacher here in the Minneapolis area. Brianna, why are you here today?
Murder is wrong. And it's as simple as that. ICE agents around here, it's painful to see all this happening. To our communities, to our students, to our just everybody. It's very frustrating.
And you mentioned the students. You're a high school teacher. Can you talk to me about the impact that the killing of Renee Good has had on the students you teach, and also the impact of the immigration raids on that young community?
Well, when everything kind of went down, we were told to keep it under wraps just because we want to keep our children and our students feeling like they're safe and that this is not something that they should be distracting them from classes and learning on Wednesday. But then, I mean, we've had students, parents, and even some students be deported. We've had things like that. I mean, parents are self-deporting too at times. This is awful, to be completely honest. It's also hard to know that I've got students who aren't coming to school because they're afraid of being picked up by ICE. I've had friends of mine, they're saying that they as teachers or parents are being followed by ICE agents. And how does that help our communities stay safe? How does this help any of us do well when we could be using these resources somewhere else that would actually benefit us?
Miranda, thank you so much. And Alex, as you can hear, we're hearing the chants of Renee Good by hundreds, if not thousands, in this crowd in Minneapolis. Alex?
Yep. We can see it both with you and also we can see it from the air with this drone footage. It is it's a growing group, becoming more boisterous. And as you said, Alex, very tragically, they're calling out the name Renee Good.
Renee Good! Renee Good!
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Alex, and thank Brianna for the interview as well. So for more on the nationwide outcry over the ICE shooting, let's go to MS Now's Laura Hafley, who is joining us from New York City. So, Laura, what's happening there? Because we know vigils and rallies have sprung up beyond Minneapolis. What are protesters there telling you, and what more can we expect this weekend?
Yeah, Alex, that's right. We're seeing protests erupt all across the country, including right here in New York City, where this group of independent protesters behind me are standing in the shadow of federal immigration court just a couple blocks away from City Hall. And of course, they're holding signs that say abolish ICE. They're actually going to start marching, which they've been doing throughout the afternoon. We'll walk with them. You're hearing them chant the name Renee Good. You're seeing signs that say abolish ICE. One sign calling for the president to be put in jail. These are the kind of protests we're seeing across the country in cities like Seattle, Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., of course, here in New York and Minnesota. This is what happens when the American people feel as though they've just witnessed some kind of injustice. These Democratic-led cities tend to band together to start protesting in this way. There's one other thing these cities have in common besides the fact that they're Democratic-led. They've also mostly all been targets of ICE operations similar to what we've been seeing in Minnesota. So again, we're going to walk with this group here, and just to set the scene for you a little bit here. Right now, we're leaving Foley Square. This area of Lower Manhattan is where a lot of the courts are. They're going to walk up the block here around this building right here. This is where Federal Immigration Court is. There's an entrance on the other side of this building that is specifically an entrance for ICE agents. And by the way, the NYPD walking alongside these protesters. You can see these barricades here blocking the way for these protesters to walk safely. A lot of these NYPD officers blocking the streets so they can cross. So again, this is just one example of what we see in these cities when something like this happens. And the anger is not just for Renee Good, but it's for the moments leading up to it. Take a listen.
ICE is conducting a reign of terror in American cities that is violence against hard-working immigrants and now just American citizens trying to defend people in their community. It's a reign of terror. It's got to stop.
It could happen anywhere. We don't want to be the next Minnesota. We want to support them even though we are far away. We want them to know that we stand with them.
So we're going to see protesters here likely throughout the rest of the early evening and tomorrow as well. Again, primarily staying here in Lower Manhattan, where Federal Immigration Court is, and again, a couple blocks away from City Hall. Alex?
In fact, that last woman with whom you spoke and portrayed for us, she's there showing solidarity with all that's happened there in Minnesota. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Laura Hafley in New York. Let's go from there now to Washington and another protest against ICE happening right now. We'll bring in MS Now White House reporter Akayla Gardner. So, Akayla, what are we hearing from the president about the shooting in Minneapolis and the investigation? And just to let everyone know what we're seeing, we are looking at Washington, D.C. footage right now of a protest going on.
Alex, President Donald Trump, along with members of his administration, have claimed that the ICE officer in question, Jonathan Ross, was acting in self-defense when he shot those fatal shots, killing Renee Good. The president specifically accused Good of, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously running over Ross. And he said that just within hours of this shooting happening. And just 30 minutes ago, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt posted on X that this woman was, quote, not an innocent mother dropping off her child at school. She claimed that she was a leftist insurrectionist. All of these claims have been coming out without a formal investigation, and according to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, there was originally an agreement for this to be a joint investigation with the FBI and local officials, but they were informed that that investigation is no longer. Instead, that was a decision made by the U.S. Attorney's Office. President Trump was asked about that decision. I want you to take a listen.
Do you believe that the FBI should be sharing evidence with state officials in Minnesota?
Well, normally I would, but they're crooked officials. I mean, Minneapolis and Minnesota, what a beautiful place, but it's being destroyed. It's got an incompetent governor, fool. I mean, he's a stupid person.
Now, President Trump there is referring to widespread fraud allegations in Minnesota involving state child care payments. It's something that Vice President Vance also sought to bring attention to when he briefed the press here at the White House. He claimed that Jonathan Ross is covered by, quote, absolute immunity. And as we see these nationwide protests, including here in Washington, D.C., Attorney General Pam Bondi is warning anyone that obstructing, impeding federal enforcement could result in prosecution. But the Department of Homeland Security put it very simply like this, saying on X, if you lay a finger on federal officers or agents, you will, quote, face the full extent of the law. Alex?
Okay, Akayla Gardner from the White House. Thanks, Akayla, for that.
President Trump continues to stoke fears that he'll turn his imperialistic rhetoric into action when it comes to Greenland. He renewed threats to take over the autonomous Danish territory in a White House meeting yesterday with oil executives.
We are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
It comes on the heels of comments he made to the New York Times that the only thing limiting his global ambitions is his, quote, own morality. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to meet with Danish officials to discuss Trump's plans next week. But those plans have been met with fierce pushback from European officials, as well as some in President Trump's own party.
I think Greenland is viewed by a lot of people as something that would be a strategic positioning for the U.S. I don't know how it develops from there.
Would you be comfortable with military action in Greenland? Look, I don't think that's right.
Folks, amateur hour is over. You don't speak on behalf of this U.S. Senator or the Congress. You can say it may be the position of the President of the United States that Greenland should be a part of the United States, but it's not the position of this government.
To invade Greenland would be weapons-grade stupid.
MS Now international reporter Inez de la Quetara joins us now from Copenhagen, Denmark. Inez, how are the president's threats toward Greenland being received by the people of that island?
Yeah, I mean, lots of pushback from Denmark, from Greenland. This morning we heard from the Greenlandic political parties, the 5 parties that are represented in the Greenlandic parliament. They put out a joint statement saying they don't want to be Americans, they don't want to be Danes, they want to be Greenlanders, and they're essentially calling on the U.S. to stay out of it. They say the future of Greenland should be decided by the people of Greenland. Here in Denmark, lots of pushback as well. So we've been talking to people around Copenhagen over the last couple of days. I will say some people laugh it off. So we spoke to one man who says he thinks that Denmark should sell Greenland to the U.S. at a very high price. He says because it's actually quite costly for Denmark to keep Greenland, but others are taking it very seriously. One woman telling me she takes it much more seriously, you know, in light of Venezuela. I'll let you listen to what some of those Danes had to say.
I think he's like a little boy wanting his toy no matter what. And, you know, in the grocery store, lying on the floor just until he gets what he wants.
It's like, you know, we have a community with Greenland now, but it's up to Greenland and their sovereignty to decide what to do with Greenland.
And I also spoke with a Greenlandic member of the Danish parliament. She says she finds all of this offensive. She says Greenland is open for business but is not for sale. She's been talking to Senator Lisa Murkowski about hopefully finding a diplomatic solution to all of this, and she is looking forward to that meeting, she says, between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Danish officials next week. She says she hopes that will lead to de-escalation.
MS Now's Inez de la Quatara with the most gorgeous background of the day. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, or this afternoon. Let's bring in Rufus Gifford, who served as U.S. Ambassador to Denmark in the Obama administration. Ambassador, thanks for joining us this morning. I would love to start this conversation with you giving us a little bit a deeper dive into the geopolitical context of what we're dealing with here and the relationship between Greenland, Denmark, and the United States. Because when I was doing a little bit of reporting on this at the beginning of the year, when this conversation first cropped up again, the beginning of last year, I suppose, when Trump took the White House, a lot of the diplomats I was speaking with said, you know, something is going to eventually happen with Greenland in the next 10 to 15 years. There is a push within the autonomous region to become independent eventually and separate themselves from Denmark, but that this is obviously not the way that they want to go ahead and do that.
Right. First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. Jackie, there's so much there to unpack in that question you just asked. First, on the question of independence, because I think it's in some ways the easiest one. Yes, there has been a decades-long political movement inside Greenland for further independence from Denmark. And over the course of the last several decades, they've had some sort of more what they call home rule, which a lot of domestic issues on Greenland is now governed by the government in Greenland. But think about this logically, especially all of us are Americans. They've been fighting for independence now for a long time, for generations. Imagine the idea of wanting to fight for independence, eventually winning it, and then choosing to go be a colony of another larger superpower. I mean, the idea is preposterous, right? It would be like in 1776, us deciding to no longer be a colony of the UK. We want to be a colony of France instead. I mean, the idea is ludicrous, right? So there's that, okay? But more, I think, separate from that, which is also just like so important. And feel free, just shut me up if you need me to shut up, because there's so much to talk about here. But the cluelessness and recklessness of everything that is coming out of the mouths of the Trump administration vis-a-vis Greenland right now is extraordinary to me. The recklessness is obvious. This is about literally destroying what I would argue is the best alliance the modern world has ever seen, and that's NATO. And I truly, and you drive a stake through the heart of NATO, which is what hostile action in Greenland means. Anyone who tries to make an argument that is good for American national security is fooling themselves.
Yeah,
Meaning,
Ambassador.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Because you do what we're hearing from folks in NATO, all the reporting suggests in any conversations we're having is like, they're concerned what would happen if the United States tried to take Greenland by force and Denmark was like, hey, Article 5, we need come over here and help us. And what does the world take on the United States? One of the things that we hear from this administration, and Donald Trump has said this a lot, is we need this for national security. Right, that Russia is, right over there, and they have ships over in the Arctic, and so therefore we need to have Greenland. I'm going to read this for our viewers from Fortune. In 1951, the U.S. and Denmark signed a little-known defense agreement, allowing the U.S., quote, to improve and generally to fit the area for military use in Greenland, and construct, install, maintain, and operate facilities and equipment there. We have treaties with Greenland and Denmark to put our resources, military resources there for national security. This was foresaw. People foresaw this. So if this is not, if they're not doing that, if Trump isn't saying we're going to toss some, more military bases there, what is this actually about?
Yeah, it's so, I love that, because this is the big issue here, Eugene, because I personally think the argument of national security is a smokescreen. We had 17 military bases on Greenland at one moment in time after World War II, and it was our choice. It was the Americans' choice to scale back our military presence on Greenland. Now we have just one left. And if we wanted to, we could build those bases right back up again. And how do you do it? You sit down across the table with two of our best allies, the Danes and the Greenlanders, and you get it done. But this administration is unwilling to engage in that work of diplomacy, and that's extraordinary to me. As it relates to the motives here, just real briefly, I think you can't. To me, it's very hard to justify this move based on what the Trump administration has uttered. So, other than the desire for kind of this domination of the Western Hemisphere, and that just boils down to.
Ambassador, I'm going to ask you a yes/no question. This is based on an exclusive report from Reuters. Trump administration mulls payments to sway Greenlanders to join U.S. This is from Thursday. U.S. officials, including White House aides, have discussed figures ranging from $10,000 to $100,000 per person, said two of the sources. Yes or no, Ambassador, will that work?
No.
Great. Okay.
No.
Really? Are you sure?
$100,000 per person that the United States has to pay them to take their country when they don't want to be the property of Denmark either. Like, it's about nationalism. Like, they don't want to be property of another country, as you said, Ambassador Rufus. Confirmed.
There's pride here. This is their land.
Yeah.
And remember, the population of Greenland is largely Inuit. Their land is they are proud of their heritage. They are proud of their land, and they don't want to be bought. They don't want to be treated like some sort of real estate transaction guys. And I think that again here, the Trump administration misunderstands the people, the history of not only Denmark and Greenland, but of the entire West, of NATO, all of it. It's just extraordinary for me, who loves this work and loves who the United States has been on the foreign policy stage to witness this.
Misunderstanding seems to be a key tenet of the foreign policy of the Trump administration. Ambassador Rufus Gifford, thank you so much for coming on The Weekend.